Today's video is going to be looking at slope-intercept form of a linear equation. The first thing you're going to want to note is that in slope-intercept form it's y equals mx plus b. Now you've seen this before, but we want to make sure that it's very clear what each of the different parts of the equation are. Y and x simply represent variables. They will just always be written as y or x, meaning either the input or the output. M is our slope. It tells us how we move from point to point. And B is our y-intercept. It tells us where to start on our graph. The first thing I want you to do is to focus your attention in on the key pieces of information from here. What you need to do is should have something written down for this video from what is slope-intercept form, what we just talked about on the last slide, writing an equation in slope-intercept form, what does that look like? Something about graphing an equation in slope-intercept form, and something about writing and graphing an equation when you're given a table, and then what to do when you're given a story problem. So go ahead and set your Cornell notes up like this so that you know exactly what we're looking for as we move through the video and what you should be taking notes on. The first thing we want to address, and the first key point to have in your notes, is how to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Sometimes you will be given a slope, the slope 4/5, and the y-intercept, the point 0, 3. Our slope tells us to move up 4 and right 5, and our y-intercept tells us to start at the point 0, 3. Our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Our slope goes in for m, our y-intercept goes in for b, and we get the equation y equals 4/5 x plus 3. Now, once we have our equation, the next thing we want to know is how do we create a graph? Well, like I said, our slope tells us that we're going to move up 4 and right 5, and our y-intercept tells us we start at the point 0, 3. If you look at the graph below, you can see that the blue point represents our y-intercept, 0 over 0, up 3. And our slope tells us that from here we need to move up 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we simply connect the points with a straight line with arrows on either end, and we have our graph of our linear equation in slope-intercept form. The nice thing about slope-intercept form is that it only requires you to have 2 points to be able to create your graph. The next thing we want to look at is what happens if we're given a table. In this case, we are given a table with the points 0, 5, 2, 2, 4, negative 1, 6, negative 4, 8, negative 7, and 10, negative 10. The first thing I want you to recognize is that this first point, 0, 5, tells us that we have a y-intercept of the point 0, 5, and so in our equation that shows up as plus 5 at the end. Now, our slope is equal to our rise over our run, or in other words that'll make sense to you, how the y value changes divided by how the x value changes. So if we look at our y value, it is going down by 3 each time. We're getting more negative. Our x value changes by going up by 2 each time. Since they're both consistent changes, we can put them in fraction form for our slope. So it's telling us to go down 3 and right 2. And we have our slope of negative 3 over 2, which you can see is in the m spot of our slope-intercept form in our equation. If we scroll down and look at the graph here, we see that it tells us to start at 0, 5, so that's our starting point. And from there we go down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, because our slope tells us to go down 3 and right 2. And we have our next point, we draw our line, and we've correctly graphed our equation in slope-intercept form. The last thing we want to look at is what do we do when we have a story problem. In this case, it says that Jim is looking at buying a new cell phone. He knows that his phone will be a one-time fee of $100, but he also knows that he will have to pay $30 each month for the plan that comes with his phone. We want to write an equation and create a graph of this situation. The first thing we want to do when we have a story problem is identify our two variables. Months is our x variable, and cost is our y variable. So months is our input, cost is our output. At month 0, the only thing he's paid for is his phone, the cost of his phone. Each month there on out, he pays $30 more per month to pay for his phone. So we see instantly this point 0, 100 tells us our y-intercept and shows up as our b value in our graph, or in our equation. And each month the change in y, or how y is changing, is going up 30, and x is changing by going up 1. So we have plus 30 over plus 1. Well, we can actually divide these, and 30 divided by 1 just makes 30. So instead of complicating it, we just simplify it and write it as 30 for our slope. It's telling us we're changing by going up 30 each time. So we have y equals mx plus b. Now, if we want to look at a graph of this to compare, if we scroll down, we see that we do start our graph at 100, and we go up 10, 20, 30 over 1 to hit our next point. We could continue this pattern and go up 10, 20, 30 over 1 again and hit our next point. Either way, you have correctly written an equation and created a graph in slope-intercept form. Make sure you guys have these notes for class on Wednesday because we'll be practicing it there. And make sure that you've correctly set up your notes and looked over and hit all of the key points in your Cornell notes. Double check and have a great weekend, guys.